All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I'm here joined by Josh Parish, the owner and founder of Vetlife, a gentleman that's sponsored this podcast for over 125 episodes now. So right before we get into it, I got to give Vetlife the shout out. Vetlife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when you transition from active duty back to civilian life, and Vetlife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to Vetlife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, the founder, the owner, we're going to tell the whole story today. You were previously on the podcast. You and I are good friends. You've known me since the basement days. You've watched me build an entity from the ground up. I've watched you build an entity from the ground up. Today's episode, I really want to make it like a tribute to what you've been able to accomplish. So let's not expedite it, but let's start from the foundation story. Like, for the people that didn't watch the first episode, how did you first come up with the idea for Vetlife? What made you bring that to reality? And then let's really expedite to the story of the monumental growth that you've experienced in the last year, 2 years, et cetera. I'll turn the mic over to you.
No, I appreciate that. Hey, I saw, before I even start, I want to say, when we talk about the basement days, I saw something in you that was very likened to me. I saw we had a lot of the same characteristics, and I love how you coined that phrase, from the ground up. I mean, because literally you built that from the ground up. So when they talk about origin story, my story isn't uncommon to many other veteran stories. It's just that I think my story is unique because I've taken all of the pain that I experienced and tried to turn it into something positive, not just for myself, but for other people. So here's the thing. When we started Vetlife, Vetlife was just as much about healing me as helping other people. Because my wife always said from the beginning, she goes, I've never seen that light come on in your eye more than when you're out there helping people. So I joined the military when I was 20. So in 2000, I joined the military and spent my 22nd my 22nd birthday in Iraq. So I was there for the initial invasion. And when I left the military, they have this program called TAPS. It's a transition assistance program. It's supposed to acclimate you on how to go back into civilian life. The military is really good at, making you into one thing. And then that's, a soldier that can overcome and adapt to any situation. But what they don't do good at is helping you turn off that switch when you leave the military. And so I struggled really hard. I couldn't get the help I needed. And this was before I met my wife. I was a single dad. I was raising a baby. My ex-wife had taken off to Texas, and so I had full custody of my daughter. And so I'd work during the day, put her to bed at night, and start drinking. I mean, I was drinking pretty heavily, and that was the only time I actually felt, I guess, a sense of calmness. Because when you're going through tough times in your head mentally, the hardest time is at night. When there's, nobody around you, the lights are off, you can't watch TV, you can't read a book, and, your mind will play some very serious tricks on you, and it really scared me. And so I met my wife when my oldest daughter was 3, I believe, and, I know she hates when I say this, but I truly believe she saved my life. She saw something in me that nobody else did. And I'm talking about family members, but she just got me more than anybody had ever gotten me before. And so we had dated a few years, and this is kind of a funny story. We'd been dating a few years, and she's like, well, I see that you're going to school, but you're really not going anywhere. She's like, I think you're going to do A, B, C, and D. And for some reason, I just go, Yeah, okay, whatever you want. I'll follow you into the depths of hell. I will go anywhere with you, and I will always be by your side. So she wanted to move downstate, so we moved downstate, and she said, you're really good. You're a very analytical thinker. I think you should go to law school. And so she helped me get a job at a county VA office, and so that's to me really where the origin story starts. And so out of 125 applicants, I got the job. I was a program director for an emergency relief fund. And the best boss I've ever had in my entire life, my first day on the job, he goes, or I go, hey, Carl, what's my job? What do I do? And he goes, I'm the sink or swim type leader. He's like, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job or what to do. He goes, I want you to make this what you think it should be. And the crazy part was the county collects a millage to help veterans. So I had quite a few dollars to work with. And I really just started building programs on the unmet needs, but also really all the struggles I went through as a veteran. Because I'm like, okay, if I went through it, how many other veterans are really going through it? So I did that job for about 4 or 5 years, and really my last year of the job, and so here's my long-winded way of really saying my origin story for this. So I had recently started a veterans treatment court for Livingston County. Worked for about 2 years on the project, and anybody listening that's not familiar with a veterans treatment court, it's an intensive treatment court in lieu of jail. What we did is we would pair you up with a veteran mentor, and you would go through a 12 to 18 month, very intensive. I mean, very, very intensive. A lot of these veterans would joke around afterwards, like, man, I should have just done my 6 months in jail, But everybody that successfully completed that program was a better person for it. So I'm sitting in the back of the courtroom one day, and it's kind of like one of these light bulb moments. I notice every 2 weeks the veterans have to go up and talk to the judge. And so I noticed that when the family was involved in the process, and what do I mean by that is when the family's in the courtroom, when they're going through the same kind of process that the veteran is, the recidivism rate dropped to almost 0%. That means that the right to reoffend dropped to almost 0%. And it was the veterans that tried to go it alone. Those are the ones that really, honestly, miserably failed. Because, there's a common theme among combat veterans that when you leave the military, you lose a sense of purpose, you lose a sense of identity. And I don't know if there's any veterans listening to this right now, but I really only feel comfortable around other veterans. I mean, I'm just literally drawn to them, and I think that's why my circle is, so, very close. And so I go back to my job, and I don't know if this was kind of fate or what, but I mean, maybe I'm not the most religious person, but, maybe a higher being is like, I see you're really, really passionate at this. And, I saw your struggle, so I'm going to try to help you be the best version of yourself. So I'm sitting in my office one day, and I get a phone call from this veteran, very similar. I mean, we had served around the same areas, same time frame. He had a daughter that was about my oldest daughter's age. I'm not going to say his name, but he had got a DUI, struggling with PTSD, had moved in with his mom. His wife had left him. He was only able to see his little girl, a couple times a week. He was really, really struggling. So for whatever reason, I went out of my way. I called the treatment court. I said, hey, let's get this veteran in the treatment court, because we as a team on the veterans treatment court, we had to vote these veterans in, or else they wouldn't be able to come into the program. So I had just taken a special liking to this guy. And for a couple of weeks, I'd call him 2-3 times a week. Just, we call it a buddy check, battle buddy check, just to make sure that he was doing okay. And one day he didn't answer the phone. Called the next day, didn't answer the phone. Called the next day, his mom answered the phone, and he had committed suicide. And I just sat there, and I hung up the phone, and this rush of emotion just came over my body. And I said inside my head, I'm not going to let this happen again. If I can use my platform, I'm going to do something about it. And I think at that point in time, when I got home and I told my wife, and I just was bawling my eyes out, and I said, we got to do something. Maybe it's just the two of us, but we're going to do something. And that's really where I think Vetlife came to be. And so I think about him a lot. I really do, because that could have been me. That very easily could have been me. And so honestly, I had no idea how to start a nonprofit. I'd went to law school, but law school only teaches you how to think analytically. And so we just sat down one day and we said, all right, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. So we're very strategic, my wife and I. The way her brain works, the way my brain works, we said, all right, we're going to give this 24, maybe 36 months at the most. If we don't believe that this, project, we just call it a project in the beginning, if we don't believe this is successful, if we're not making that meaningful impact, we'll just go back into the private sector. And quite honestly, I never wanted to go back to the private sector. I love being my own boss. I love working hand in hand, day to day with my wife. So long story short, so we're sitting down and we're like, okay, there's two of us to start out with. What can we do? And I said, okay, we need to involve the families in the process. Because my wife, my family, my kids helped me get through those dark times. I watched the Veterans Treatment Court. I watched the family help the veteran get through those dark times. I saw what happened to that gentleman, that veteran, because he was alone through the process. And like I said, when you're sitting at home alone at night, those dark thoughts come through. Sometimes they just win. And I can't tell you, there's a few times where they almost won for me. So my wife's a marketing guru. I mean, God, just the way her brain works, it just amazes me. So I'm like, all right, come up with a name for our nonprofit. She's like, Vetlife. I'm like, oh, God, how the hell do you come up with this kind of stuff? I'm like, all right, what do we want to focus on? So we came up with these 4 core pillars. That's how we operate. So these 4 core pillars were traditionally the 4 main issues that veterans face when they leave the military: education, employment, healthcare, quality of life. So we said, all right, we're going to start aligning strategic partners. So that's kind of like our way to bring some seed funding in. We had reached out to, and he has honestly become one of my most trusted confidants, and you know him as well. His name's AJ Franchi. AJ, I don't, if you're listening to this, I love you. I love you like a brother, and you don't know how much you really mean to me and what you did for me, because for 2 years, he funded us to get us up and going. And so I said, all right, babe, we gotta be like, we're throwing a boulder into a lake. We got to make the biggest splash we can. I don't want to be like every other nonprofit. We help with this, we help with that. I want to change the landscape on how veterans think about themselves, how they, want to go about getting help, because veterans are very proud people. So we wanted to make very, non-adversarial events for these people, but include the family. So, we don't want to make them feel broken. I said, all right, we got to have a huge event. And she literally in 5 minutes, she's like, VetFest. I'm like, all right, well, what is VetFest? And she goes, well, you got to, and she's talking like we're just having Sunday dinner, She's like, all right, well, you got to include the family in the process. All right, there's all these resource providers that help people. It's just veterans don't really understand what those benefits are or where to go to get them. So you got to have those. Oh, and then you got to have, we'll bring Home Depot in so you can have some kids' crafts. Oh, bounce houses. Oh, got to have some live bands. Veterans, they want to have a drink, And so, like, I'm writing all this stuff down and, like, kind of like a Venn diagram. And I'm like, oh, my God. And so we start doing research. Nobody else is doing this. Like, to the point where if you're a veteran and you go to these resource fairs, you're there for 20 minutes. You get a couple flyers, you get a magnet, maybe a bottle of water, and then you're gone. And then all of a sudden you have a pile of papers, and then they make really good, kind of campfire fodder. but there's no meaningful impact. So the very first year we did Vet Fest, it was just honestly her and I. We thought, okay, maybe 200-300 veterans will attend, but we knew at the end of the day, one constant thing is all these resource providers that get paid to help these veterans, they're there in force, and they're out there marketing, and they're like, get to Vet Fest, get to Vet Fest. We had over 1,700 people pass through the gates that very first year. And here is something that completely blows my mind. If you go on our website, it's one of the things I'm most proud of. It's testimonial. So I'm just kind of sitting in the back, and this is kind of funny. I don't know if you remember this or not, but Amanda Bobby Cooper was supposed to be there to sign autographs. Like an hour goes by, and I'm like, where in the hell is she? And you were like, oh, it's just fighters are sometimes they're late. They go on jiu-jitsu time, I think is what you told me. So I'm kind of stressing out. I'm like, man, where the heck is she? Because there's a lot of people there for her to, have some autographs signed. And I'm just kind of laser focused on what's going on. And all of a sudden I get a little tap on my shoulder, and I end up finding out it's the spouse of a veteran. And she's literally bawling her eyes out. I mean, just crocodile tears. She gives me this huge hug. She goes, I think you saved my husband's life. And I'm looking around. I'm like, me? How did I save your husband's life? She goes, he has not left the house in I don't know if it was 3 months or 6 months, whatever it was. She goes, for whatever reason, he found out about Vet Fest, and he started doing some research on it, and he said, we have to go to this. And you know why? Because he's allowed to bring the family. Other events, you're not allowed to bring your family. I mean, they're just not designed for you. And so we do these things called battle buddy checks, where we do 30, 60, 90-day checks on these men and women just to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks like I did. And so I'm happy to report, he was struggling with alcoholism like I did. Marriage was on the rocks. And I'm literally happy to report to this day, still happily married. Family life is just, he's kicking ass. As if you're listening to this out here, I know you're kicking ass. So I think he went back to school, got a job, just everything that you want to have come from an event. And for that sole reason, we knew Vet Fest was going to be the biggest and the best thing ever. So we just got so big so quick that I really didn't know how a board operated. I didn't know what a board of directors was. I didn't know what officers were. And it was kind of like everything I've ever done in my life leading up to it. Trial by error, or trial by fire, I guess, if you want to call it. So yeah, I know this is hopefully, people that are listening to this can, get some insight on how hard it is to start a nonprofit. But if your heart's in it, and if you have a good partner like I do, it really just makes it not feel like work at all. So.
What was the first year that you held Vet Fest? Because I know how big it's gotten now, and I know, I'm sure next year is going to be absolutely off the charts because this one was huge. What was the first year that you held that event? And it also sounds like Courtney is a chat GPT of ideas for marketing and advertising. Like, the fact that she can just, from the ether, well, what about this? Oh, you would do it this way, like this, like that. That's incredible. That is a gift for sure. Most people lack vision. They are good at problem solving things that are in set parameters. Hey, here's the problem. Can you fix this? And I feel like public education system probably trains people to think like that. But the ability to create and innovate and pull something out of nothing and say, well, this is what it would look like. This is how it would exist. This is how you set it up and plan it. That's magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't find that as often.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your first boss that you said was the best boss you've ever had in your life, he almost pushed you to be that type of person because he wasn't like, here are your tasks. This is what you have to execute on. Like almost military mindset.
Yeah.
He said, understand the problem, learn the environment, figure out all the variables, and come up with a solution. That type of thinking is what you need to be an entrepreneur. That's what you need to create a nonprofit. That's what you need to change a community and a demographic, is because the problem hasn't been solved yet because there hasn't been a substantial enough answer presented.
Yeah.
So you have to think outside of the parameter of the current problem to solve it. And I feel like that's what you're doing here with Vetlife. I feel like Vetlife is going to shape the Michigan veteran landscape. And then who's to say that you don't go national and start changing the landscape across the country, because what you're doing is you're finding the solutions to extremely difficult problems that matter.
Yeah.
And when you get your heart ripped out, as much as it is a painful and terrible and dark event, what you went through, having a friend commit suicide like that, it's also a great fuel, because that night you'll remember forever and you'll go, no, I need to change that as much as humanly possible. So what was the first year of Vetlife? And then how have you watched it evolve since? Like after you had that, the day after that first Vetlife event, what were you seeing, thinking, feeling, etc.? And then start to unveil the years as you go. What was the first one?
So the first year of VetFest was 2017. We had held it in Brighton. And then the next year, we held it at Cleary University. And we just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point now, fast forward to 2023, our VetFest events are always second Saturday in August. And we actually found a home for the Livingston County VetFest 2 or 3 years ago at the Fowlerville Family Fairgrounds. This year's attendance topped 3,300. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And it's, crazy. So think about it this way. The first year we did it, I did all the setup and the teardown. So I actually didn't have an opportunity to really sit back, like you were saying, and just kind of look at the fruits of your labor and really take it in. 4 hours after the event, I was just getting done moving the last picnic table, and then doing a follow-up interview with like some, CBS or something. And the way that they talked to me in the beginning was like, they thought like I had a team of like 100 people, like we were some huge corporation. And they're just, their minds are blown every time I tell them that it was literally just my wife and I sitting at a kitchen table, just talking, about how we can make the world a better place. And I think I was in a very unique position because after I left the military, I worked for the federal government, I worked for the county, then I ended up working for the state of Michigan. And that's where it really opened my eyes to really what the issues were that were plaguing veterans that nobody else gets. I'm talking the federal government doesn't get it, the state, the counties, none of them get it. So the way that we call it resource provision, which is really what Vetlife does, the government has a backwards approach to it. They expect that the veteran should come to them to search out those benefits, but those veterans don't understand what those benefits are. And I mentioned earlier about that TAPS program. If you leave the military service, it's called ETS, Estimated Time of Separation. If you leave the military out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and you're coming back to Michigan, that TAPS program can't tell you where to go in Michigan to get those resources. Nothing more than, they can tell you to go to the VA. The VA is such an all-encompassing term. So we just wanted to simplify the process. And that's really why I think that we've been so successful, to the point where the actual VA itself, this billions and billions dollar corporation, they've actually replicated our VetFest event this year. And I at first I was a little irritated because the way that I am, I have a vision for something and I don't think anybody can do it as well as we can do it. But at the end of the day, my wife's saying, to me, that's a form of flattery. And, hopefully they do it, live up to our expectations. So hopefully, like you were saying, we see VetFest going more on a national scale. The state of Michigan, mutual friend of ours, General Paul Rogers, has agreed to allow Vetlife to go into all 38 Michigan National Guard units in the next couple of years. And really, here's the main crux of what we want to do. We want to get to these men and women before they leave the military and start connecting those dots. So that way, I can start tracking those metrics and saying, I know right now there's 8,000 to 10,000 National Guard troops in the state of Michigan. I can effectively understand, where these guys and girls are falling through the cracks. okay, so maybe we need to ramp up this program or ramp up that program, but I'll have a better idea in the next couple of years. And then what I want to do is I want to use Michigan as my pilot project and then go from state to state to state. Because here's the thing. There's 20 million veterans in this country right now. Every year, 200,000 more veterans leave the military and transition to civilian life. There's no reason why I can't start connecting those dots before they leave the military and start building up that vetted database like I mentioned earlier. So
100%. And what you're doing at that point then is it's like a lot of the times what goes wrong with health is there's a core problem, and then in this country we treat the symptoms.
Yep.
But we don't fix the core problem.
Yep.
That's exactly what you're describing. There is a core problem here with veterans leaving the military and not understanding the resources and benefits. There's a core problem. Mm-hmm. And we have always tried to treat symptoms by going, oh, maybe we can just put them a little more funding here or do this or do that. No, you need to treat the problem, which is education, getting to these people, building communities in advance, letting them know the people that they can count on and trust and exactly what they have access to. You're creating a pipeline. You're creating this roadway that people will understand that it exists, and it's okay to go down that road. And they'll know other veterans that have already worked with Vetlife in these organizations. So then there's trust. Because the other thing that veterans like is they want to be part of communities that they know have their back. A lot of the times, they're not willing to bridge the gap into an unknown without having a veteran or someone else that's like, hey, man, this was game-changing for me. Going to this event, meeting these people. It's that community thing that you found when you were sitting in that court program and watching and going, wow, the people that actually have a support system that aren't just fighting this battle alone, they're breaking through. So it's not the information. Everybody has access to this information. Everybody has these advantages. Everyone has, struggles and things that are going their way. But the one common denominator is the power of community. Yep. And that's what Vetlife is solving. And that's what you witness firsthand. And you can see it in the people. You can see it in the people that interact with Vetlife, that they understand that it's almost the fact of you being just you and Courtney was your superpower. If you were 100 people organization, there's probably so much red tape, and there's so many, this person has to check with this person, has to go to this and that. It's almost easier the fact that you got to go, it's the two of us that are passionately trying to solve a problem that you lived through. Yep. That's the magic. That's what people don't get. So it's about creating that type of connection within the community. And I think you just have to learn to scale that correctly. And how do you scale that correctly? You do that by finding the right people to bring into the organization. Like AJ Franchi was obviously a godsend. Without him and Paul Rogers and these right people going, this is it. You can't open the doorways to the next level. But it sounds like you're about to experience some exponential growth, because even with just the Michigan National Guard, if you make Wake and move the metrics within them, why in the world is not every branch going to be going, how do we bring Vetlife on board? Because we see how much it has helped this group of people. Veteran suicides is a numbers you don't even want to look at.
Right.
If you're not familiar with these numbers and these statistics and how bad it is out here for veterans, you do a little bit of research, you'll be going, okay, this is desperately needed. This isn't something we want to put in addition to what we currently offer. It's desperately needed. If you sit down with Anton Harb, you sit down with these other veterans, several that have been on our podcast, and talk to these people, you'll realize this is a massive flaw in the system. Mm-hmm. We're great about training people. We're great about throwing a patriotic, commercial on TV for why you should sign up for the military. Right. We're great about execution when you're over there on a mission, but we need to up our game with the follow-up. And the way we do that is from passionate projects that are built. There's so much, even when I sit here and listen to you talk about this, there's so much similarity between my story of building this and your story of building Vetlife, because I didn't have to get approval from people. Right. I didn't have to wait on people for this. I got to look at problems and say, how can I solve this? And the reason you're willing to run Vetlife the way you did, and you go, or Vet Fest, let's say, for example, for 2 people, because you'll go all in when it's a passion project. Mm-hmm. It's hard work, but it's when you work extremely hard for something you're not passionate about, it's tiring, it's exhausting, it's debilitating, you need to recover. When you go all in on a dream and a passion, it almost refuels itself because you can see the steps in the right direction. You get to go, we did this. Yeah. From our conversation in the kitchen to 1,600 people just experience something here today. That's magic. So let's first of all, any partnerships recently that you put together that you think are monumental, like the Paul Rogers one, or things that you currently have in the works that really is moving the metrics for Vetlife. Let's discuss those things, but then also let's project forward.
Yeah.
Like really what you see coming together, the people, that could be game changers for you, the projects you're trying to build, et cetera.
So, and I do have to mention this. So, I grew up on a little Native American reservation up in the UP. So I don't know if many people know this, but Native American veterans are the highest serving demographic in the military.
I did not know
since
that.
World War I.
So per capita.
Yep. Native Americans are the highest serving population. We make up less than 1% of the population right now, but we're the highest serving population. For those of you that are watching that don't, I guess kind of understand, tribes are sovereign nations. So they don't report to the state government. They don't report to the federal government per se. So they're just kind of standalone countries. So they don't share a lot of data. So I started this project about 2 years ago. The state of Michigan theorizes that there's around 4,300 tribal veterans in the state of Michigan. I think that number is very inaccurate, and I'll tell you why. So we'll just there's 12 federally recognized tribes in Michigan. Just take Sioux Tribe, for example, up in the UP. They have over 43 or 47,000 members, just that tribe alone. So I'm sure you could find 4,000 veterans just in that population. So I had approached this company called Enbridge, and it was so weird. This Navy vet named Eric reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I've been watching all your videos. I'm a vet myself. How can I get involved?" And it was crazy. I go, we have one sponsorship left for VetFest. I said, 10, 12, whatever. And he goes, "All right, I'll get you the money tomorrow." I'm like, "No way." I said, "All right, okay." And I've heard this before, but yeah, he invested in, his company invested in the project. And then I went to him and I said, "Okay, I see that you guys have a vested interest in the Native American community as well. Here's my idea. I want to go to all federally recognized tribes, and I want to identify all of the tribal veterans and surviving spouses, the dependents, because they get benefits as well." He goes, "All right, just submit a grant." So I submitted a grant, and they approved it. And now I'm working tribe to tribe to tribe to accurately identify how many tribal veterans are in the state of Michigan. But the best part about it is their company is in every state. So they're like, maybe we could do this in Oklahoma. Maybe we could do this in Texas, Florida, California, wherever tribes are. And that's what I want to do. I love what we're doing in Michigan, but I want to make sure that, or I want to change the way we help veterans when they leave the military. And I think I have right here in my head, I have the knowledge to do it, and my wife has the wherewithal to understand how to take all the garbled stuff inside my head and neatly package it and make it into a very easily understandable kind of protocol. So
yeah. Man, that is unbelievable, though. The fact that, and it really does rely upon the passion and generosity of others that see and understand the problem, that go, this guy is moving the metrics. Yeah. This is the type of person you want to get behind. And really, that's how exponential growth happens. When this gym blew up is when the right people started coming together, and we created this force, because what it is you radiate passion for what you're doing. You have a project that you're growing. You're making a certain amount of ripple effects on the universe. All of a sudden, you bring in other powerhouse people that see and feel that. The radiance gets dramatically more bright. Like the magnetism, let's call it. All of a sudden, it is tenfold or 100-fold. What that does is all the people that might have been outside of your reach initially, they start to feel the effects. And then they go, I need to get on board with this. It's unbelievable that you just got a message one day from a guy at Enbridge.
Out of the blue.
Yeah. Hey, I would like to see if I can help with this. And then, bam, he ends up being a vital partner that will be, it sounds like a key component into the national expansion.
Well, what I want is I had submitted, because I want to work with them moving forward. So I submitted a proposal for a 5-year project. and I want them to be the primary sponsor of all of our events. Because if they're as passionate as Eric is about this, I mean, they're going to be able to see the meaningful impact we can make on the community. And here's the beautiful part about it. Let's say Enbridge has 10,000 veteran employees. I guarantee you 99.9% of them have no idea what their benefits are. We have these welcome home packets we designed, really kind of just tells our story and then tells you what documents you're going to need to start gathering to get those benefits. And what I'm willing to do is work with all of their veteran employees to start connecting the dots for them.
Can you create a Vetlife app?
So
could you create an app that literally has access to your entire network, to the right people? You could have contact information.
Yep.
You could have all the program, even if it's not like an app that, because I know so much has to get digitized and we're so behind on a lot of veterans things. Even if it was just an app to navigate different problems, to link you with the correct people that are through the organization of Vetlife or through the network, you could create that already now. You don't have to have the digitizer to just show the Vetlife chain of people, like who you have to talk to. If you had an app that every veteran scan this QR code to download the Vetlife app, and now all of a sudden it links them to the network that you've created.
Yeah.
Dude, it would be absolutely game changing. And you could create a QR code. It could be on every single thing you do. Scan this app to download the Vetlife app. Josh, that would blow up. You'd have you could get to millions or tens of millions of users of this app, which then connect them to all of the appropriate people. And then any company that wants to back Vetlife knows that like there are a million people that are going to use this app when they have this problem, they're searching for this benefit, they're searching for this thing. They're going to click on that, and it's going to show that we are the primary provider and sponsor and person to facilitate that area. That would be a complete revolutionary game-changing thing that would help veterans instantly.
So it's funny you mentioned that because, and Josh Ross, if you're listening to this, you are kind of like my AJ Franchi in the artificial intelligence world. So a couple months ago, again, just get a random contact submission on our Vetlife. My wife will filter the ones that she thinks that I should speak to. This guy named Josh Ross, through a mutual friend, had reached out, and AI is blowing up right now. And like I said earlier, it was just Courtney and I in the beginning, but there's 570,000 veterans just in Michigan alone. I can't get to all those veterans by myself. So this Josh Ross guy said, "Listen, I'll fund your pilot project. We're going to incorporate ChatGPT in on your website, and you're going to everything inside your head, all those resources that we talked about that I've built a database over the years, we'll load them on the back end. So now any veteran that wants to get to Josh or Courtney can really just go to what we're calling our battle buddy. Hey, I need help with A, B, C, or D. Yeah. And we can upload that. So like I said, we have a vetted resource database, because that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of these veterans face. Is there's a lot of companies out there that, don't answer the phones or, don't follow up like we do. And so veterans need to know that when they call, when they text, when they email, that they're going to get taken care of, because a lot of us feel let down after we leave the military. So
honestly, AI is going to reshape the entire world.
Yeah.
If you haven't messed with ChatGPT, just go on there and have a conversation with that thing. Just go ask some questions.
Yep.
Ask it to design you a full spreadsheet. Tell it to imagine that ChatGPT is starting a nonprofit for veterans, blah, 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 and how would you systematically put together and solve these problems. It is unbelievable what AI will be capable of doing, and we're only on the forefront. Can you imagine in 20 years what AI is able to do?
Yeah.
If you can lead that kind of revolution in the spectrum, imagine if they could go on and speak to the battle buddy, and he walks them through all kind of situations of their life.
Yeah.
You could even have people like Seth Norholm program in sides to respond.
Oh, you're getting there.
For trauma and difficulty. Like, I'm a creator just like you. So like I can already, I see 10 or 15 avenues already in my brain where I'm like, this could be the most powerful veteran resource known to the United States of America, Josh, if you build this the right way. Things like that makes life an adventure. It makes it like so grand. So like that should make you jump out of the bed in the morning and go, if I can bring this to fruition, this could change millions of lives for years to come. I'm already like, I don't even know how far you are on that project, but I'm telling you right now, that is something you need to go all in on.
No, it's a game changer. And let me back up real quick because really another good mutual friend of ours, Nick, runs the pizza place. He talked about this thing called imposter syndrome. And if anybody's, if you're aware of what imposter syndrome is, it's like, you don't know if you should really deserve, where you're at in life. And here's something crazy, for anybody listening that struggles with mental health and, kind of that imposter syndrome. A couple of years back, your mind can take you into some pretty crazy places. And I remember I got to a point where, I was doing a lot of interviews. Getting a lot of attention from the, people that were able to make some decisions. And they're, telling you that you're doing so great in life. You're just kicking life's ass. And then you go home at night and you look at yourself in the mirror and you feel like you haven't accomplished a single thing. And you just talked about being able to get out of bed in the morning and just kind of, feeling like you're, really doing great things. I remember I was going through that thing and, Nick, you really helped me kind of put it into perspective. But I remember I was at the gym shortly afterwards and I just randomly text my wife. I'm like, you know what? I know we're doing great things, but I really don't feel like we are. I don't know why, but I just feel like there's just still some emptiness inside me. And then the next day I got up and I just, like you were saying, I just felt like I can do anything. There's nothing that I can't accomplish. And I remember texting my wife, and I think I have saved a screenshot, but I'm like, have you ever felt so good about yourself that you wish you could just take that feeling and bottle it up? So when you're not feeling good, you could just open that bottle up, and just get a little smell of it. And so every time I feel like I don't deserve to be where I'm at, I really just think about that one time that I felt like I was on top of the world, and I just use that to kind of fuel, because I get overwhelmed all the time. I go up against so many obstacles because at the end of the day, the system that's in place right now has been in place for hundreds of years. And so if you've ever tried to change the way people have done things for hundreds of years, they don't like that. They do not like that at all. And you get criticized and you get told that, what you're doing isn't going to make a meaningful impact to anybody. And, if it weren't for the network that I surround myself with, which is very, very small right now, and I like it like that because I know that the people that I reach out to, I can trust. And so I think this is just a really good opportunity to quickly touch on, if anybody wants to start a nonprofit, it really has to be started with the board of directors. You have to have a strong, loyal, trustworthy board of directors, and I have that. And I have a dear friend of mine, Eric Hipple. You know Eric. Eric was a quarterback for the Detroit Lions. I have John Emis, who's kind of our guru when it comes to anything legal-wise. I have AJ Franchi. As you all know, he's the CEO of Gold Star Mortgage. And then I have my wife and I. And I love the direction that we're heading in. And I don't think that we would even be where we're at today, because I've seen a lot of nonprofits, I've seen a lot of for-profits dissolve because of a toxic board of directors. And so I believe that they should get, a lion's share of the credit for, where we're at today, and just being probably the most supportive people that I've ever seen in my life. So
that I think is crucial. Yeah. The people you keep in your close unit, that is everything, man. Mm-hmm. Because at times you are just going to have to lean and depend on people. And you got to know you can trust the people that have your back, even just for the confidence that gives you. When you're going into a battle and you know that you can count on the people that are around you, that's where your faith and courage comes from. It's not just the faith that you have in yourself. It's knowing that, all right, I got a couple of the people that believe I can make this thing happen. Let's go make it happen. Yep. It almost fuels you, too, because, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to let these people down. It's sometimes harder to fight on behalf of other people than it is for ourselves. It's like, I'm not going to let these people down. I'm not going to fail these people.
Right.
And imposter syndrome is very real. Almost everyone I've ever met that's successful has battled with that. And one of the things I tell a lot of those people is your struggles and dark times and difficulties and and the battle with alcoholism and this, that, and the other thing, and the being the lesser version of yourself, that is actually what qualifies you to now be the man you are that can make the difference you've made. If you had never battled through the dark times, if you had never gone through the depression, if you had never felt the abysmal pits that life can be, then you would not be the man that could actually connect and have real empathy and impact for the other people. It's the fact that you have suffered tremendously that allows you to be the ambassador on behalf of people that are suffering. The reason I can make such a difference with so many kids that have come from really dark places is because I've been there. I've felt that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that feeling stays with you, and at some point it wants to lie to you, and it wants to tell you that, well, you're just this guy. Right. You're this, you're that. You've messed up. You've had failures. You've had that. Why should you be the one? It's that qualifies you. That helps you be powerful in the face of those type of situations. You know what I mean? Because you can understand them.
Well, there's a level of authenticity.
100%. So don't let it disempower you. Let it empower you and go, I am going to be the one that makes a difference. Yeah, that guy just from a reservation that was almost lost to alcoholism, that got saved by a woman that had faith in me, that built a program from the ground up. Yep. That's the reason that I'm the one. You know what I mean? So shout out to Nick Monesto over there at Captains on Main. You know what I mean? That's good advice.
A good man, Nick.
100%. He's one of those guys that when you're around, you're like, this is just a good man trying to build his dream.
Yep.
And that's what you want to surround yourself with, is people like the authenticity.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite type of people. Is like, I want to know the real you. You don't like. The more I know and trust the real version of you, the more that I'm willing to go to bat with you, because I'm not thinking that there's going to be this unexpected turn of events. Yeah. Like, I actually trust you, So that's what you're trying to create. With that being said, Vetlife's on fire. You got all these projects going. I'm stuck. My brain can't stop running over here about the AI and what the Battle Buddy could be and what a Vetlife app could be. And, I mean, you really have unbelievable potential there because it's ease of access. You need to make it easily accessible to people. If any veteran that's struggling could just come towards you and your network and your community, you can move them in a better direction. But you want to expand that reach to be as large as possible. And I think from all these different connections you're making, you're on the precipice of something gigantic. So, man, we've had an incredible episode today. We almost filmed an hour talking about this. Anything else that you can think about that you'd like to put on the podcast for now? I'm sure we're going to be doing another one 1.5 years, 2 years from now. Yeah. And hopefully so many of these things you've manifested into reality and it happened. But just any last thing you'd like to say, whether it's speaking to the veterans, whether it's upcoming events you have, whether it's just, other things that we haven't spoken about for 2024 and ahead. Anything you'd like to say, maybe just shout out to the family and the right people. And if not, we'll wrap this thing up. I think we've shot a phenomenal dialogue, and I think this should motivate a lot of people. I think a lot of people that are considering, you're on the fence about backing Vetlife, like, are you donating to a good cause? So many times the reason people don't give to charity is because you're afraid that your contributions won't really move the metrics. Mm-hmm. And if you genuinely believed some of the excess that you have in your life would move metrics in a positive direction for a group that you care about deeply or resonate with, you would do it. They get to see you. Yeah. This isn't you on behalf of Vetlife. You are Vetlife. The same way I am SFS. Yeah. So I really hope this podcast helps people make the connection and go, that's the type of guy that I'll root for. That's the type of guy that I'll back. That's the type of guy that I want to have a partnership with.
Well, let me say this. So I have one of those smart TVs at home, and it's connected to my Amazon, I think, so I can do like a photo library, like a kind of a collage of photos. And I keep this one specific picture on there, and not a lot of people know about it, but I'm happy to say this today because I'm hoping that somebody listening used to have to paint a smile on their face the way that I used to. So I'm at a Tigers game, just my daughter and I, my oldest daughter, Zoe. And we're sitting there, and she wants to take a selfie. and I was actually gonna commit suicide. I really was. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was so unhappy with my life. I felt like, whatever was going on inside your head, it finally just won, and I had just given up. And I keep that picture there because I'm smiling. I have this big grin on my face. I'll never forget it. And I'm just thinking, I'm taking the picture in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be here anymore. But I want my daughter to know that I love her. And so I don't want to really say any more other than I hope this episode reaches the people that it needs to reach, to let you know that even though sometimes in your life you do have to paint a smile on, it does get better. It really does. And don't let those voices overpower you and make you feel like you can't go on anymore, because I guarantee you there's people in this world that love you and care about you. And if there's anything I can do, we're really easy to find. I'm not going to do any shameless plugs. If you're listening to this and you're struggling, please reach out. We're always here for you. So thank you, James. I appreciate you letting me talk about this on your platform.
I think this is a phenomenal way to end the episode. I'm a big quote guy. You know that. I'm always quoting things, right? There's a quote that really resonates with me because I've been in that place. I've been in that moment sitting in my car thinking like today was the day. Like I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. And there's this quote that says, it's darkest before the dawn. And that's like how it is in life. And so many times, like you'll hit these places that are so deep and so dark, and you don't think there's any way out of it. You don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. You have two people sitting here today that can say, if you just continue to march on and you don't give up on that fire in your heart, and you battle the right way, and you seek out the help that you need, or you look within and just believe that there can be a better life on the other side of this thing. We're two living examples of that. And if more people could connect to that belief that, like, it can get better.
Mm-hmm. It will get better. Yeah.
I used to cling to the words, it's possible. And I used to, whenever I would doubt myself, whenever I would doubt what I was trying to build, whenever I would doubt that my life would ever actually be substantial, or that I would be in a loving place or in a good spot mentally, I would say to myself, it's possible that could happen. And you know what? If it's possible, then I'm going to keep marching onward. The only way I would have stopped, I got to a point where the only way is if it was truly impossible, that no matter what, the suffering could never end in my life. Well, guess what? I could never actually fully say that it was impossible that my life could be turned around. So I would just cling to that. It is possible. And guess what? Chasing It's Possible built everything that I have, built everything that you have, and hopefully builds amazing stories for other people.
I agree.
So we'll wrap this episode up. Shout out to Vetlife, even if he won't do it. VetlifeToday.org. Just anything you need, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you
guys.
Thank you.